What's up, everybody? We're back for another week of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor Brian Wagner, and this week on the show we got Jim Oberhofer. Jim, what's going on?
And not much, Brian. I'm just here in my oil change shop, and I've been the pit guy today, so I've been changing oil, and it's raining like mad down here, so I'm dripping oil all over me, and I've got water dripping all over me, so it's fun times here in Plano, Texas.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's when you got to be down there pit doing that deal. Sometimes it's when the weather's inclement, it's gotta be a lot of not fun.
Oh yeah, well, we had that big snowstorm, the Texas blizzard back in February, and I was underneath, and all that nasty snow and stuff melting. I mean, I was cursing and MFing everybody in sight, about the weather, and but we made it through. A couple of days later, it was 80 degrees and sunny, so it was all good.
Yeah, thankfully, Texas doesn't have to deal with that nearly as much as we do here in the Midwest, where it's like a yearly occurrence we prepare ourselves for, and we know it's coming. In Texas, they didn't know what to do.
Oh no, it was a fiasco. It was entertaining watching people drive around here, especially because there's a lot of people that came from California that live here, and they had no clue what was going on, and then the people from Texas, they don't see this very much. So my 31 years of living in Michigan definitely came in handy at that time.
Absolutely. I have been in that situation driving to one of Donald Long's races, driving through Kentucky where they didn't get a lot of snow or ice usually. And I'm just, blasting along doing my deal. And there's other people that clearly were not okay with the situation.
Yep. I bet.
They did not. What cracks me up anymore is you see people that freak out when there's rain, like it's raining, not even relatively hard. It's like, it's rain, people. Come on.
Yeah, I've noticed that down here too. Because they'll go. I mean, it's not like Vegas or Phoenix where they go hundreds of days in a row without rain, but they'll go a pretty good time where people start complaining about droughts and things like that. And then when it rains a little bit, it's like everybody's first day of driving. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me, the power of some people's inability to deal with the situation. And it's funny, I guess, is when you've been around the racing world and traveled as much as we have, you just kind of you learn to deal with just about anything, because I've said this 1,000 times, it's always an adventure when you're going to the track, just going there before you even start racing.
Oh yeah, in all my years of being on the road, which is, I think it's over 35 years now. We've seen everything, and you just, like, for me, I'm just like ready for anything. Nothing phases me too much, but boy, some people that don't have that experience of, being in all different parts of this country, sometimes they don't know what hit them.
Yeah. There's a lot of time. Like, I used to be that way. Anymore, it's like, that's a new one. And you just go about, you go about your business.
Yep. Yeah, that's all you could do.
Yeah, because you got a lot of experience in the world of nitro racing. A lot of people might not know this at a young age. Your dad was a nitro racer, and you traveled to a lot of match races, with a small team. Kind of what was it like back in those early days of the nitro match racing deal?
Well, when I was a kid, my dad, at first he was part of the with him, Frank Jodis and Jim Grace, they had the Pleasure Seekers Top Fuel Dragster. And then after the 75 season, they quit running that car. And then my dad went and started racing with Hank Andrews, Chip Brown, and Bill Clark on the Nirvana Top Fuel Dragster. So, when I was my brother and I, when we were very young, and it's hard to really remember what year that would be, but I'm guessing like what I first remember going was probably 1972 or 3. My dad would take my brother and I, and we would go to Maple Grove, or we would go to Budds Creek, or Maryland International Dragway back then. And then we did a lot of that, as kids. And I always thought it was fun because back then they had what they called the Pro Fuel Circuit. So a lot of top East Coast racers, like Top Fuel guys, they'd have these booked in shows everywhere. So they were kind of fun to be part of. And then also the Division One races back when they had Top Fuel and Funny Car and Pro Stock were involved in all that. That was fun because as a family, you know, my mom, my dad, and my brother and sister, we would all go to these races, and it was just a lot of fun. But I remember probably the coolest match race deal that I was ever part of as a kid, and it was when the Nirvana car match raced Big Daddy Don Gartlett's on a Wednesday night at Maple Grove, and we were all down there. And of course, Gartlett's, he is the man of drag racing. No ifs, ands, buts about it. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I remember going there, and the place was packed. And you know, Gartlett's, of course, he won all 3 races against the car. But it was just neat to be part of something like that with, you know, arguably the greatest. You know, he is the greatest drag racer of all time, and maybe probably one of the greatest racers in motorsports, period. And that was something that really stuck out with me that I remember as a kid growing up. And I remember going to the races and hanging on the fence and watching Jungle Jim race and Perdome and the Blue Max car. I just remember all these, and it was just really, I think, a neat time of racing back in the mid 70s.
You know, I think that it can never be stated enough how important, you know, those early days of those formative days of racing, especially, you know, nitro racing, you know, there was so much like, it's hard for people to understand how different it was in these match races and how big of a deal that was, because, you know, there'd be these set up with all kinds of cars from across the country, but then you'd have the big names come down, like you just mentioned, and that was a big deal. That really was.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, Gartlett's was by far, you know, just the most popular racer back then, and still is, you know, to this day. I mean, everybody knows who Big Daddy Don Gartlett's is. And you know, and it was just it was a cool time of racing, and there were so many Top Fuel cars, so many funny cars, and it was just a neat time. And you had all these great names, you know, whether they came from out west or down southeast or, you know, up in the Midwest or the East Coast. There was just so many great teams and drivers. And you know, back then the cars, like they had a personality, you know. So I look at the cars my dad had, you know, the Pleasure Seekers and or Nirvana, and you know, there was a lot of cool cars, you know, on the East Coast back then that just had cool names and cool personalities with them. Jim Booker, you know, there was the Jim and Allison Lee car. Just so many like awesome cars back then. And then, you know, and just to be a part of that and remembering some of that is you know, that's why I love the sport. You know, that's why I love drag racing. And my brother and I, we just, as kids, we ate it up, you know. And my sister too, you know, she didn't go to all the races, but when she was there, she loved it. And as she grew to be an adult, she loved it even more, especially since her brothers were involved in it.
You know, it's funny that you don't realize you're living history until you're well past it. And I think it's important for people. It kind of teaches us to live in the moment so you can enjoy things like you're talking about there, and kind of looking at that. You know, who is your biggest influence early on in your racing career, and kind of when all this was starting?
Well, I would say, you know, obviously my dad was my biggest influence, you know, as far as early on and an early age, because my dad loved drag racing, and he still does. And so, you know, if it wasn't for him, my brother and I, we wouldn't be in the positions that we're in right now in the drag racing world. So, you know, obviously he was the biggest influence on us, you know, growing up as kids and stuff. And then, you know, after that, you know, as I got into my adult life, obviously Connie and Scott Coletta were the biggest influences for me. You know, Scott was, he was a friend of mine before I went to work for the Coletta team back in 1988. You know, we used to help them. My brother and I, we'd clean parts every time they came close to Dallas, Texas. And, you know, getting to know Scott, and he stayed at my mom and dad's house a few times, and I would take him to the Xantop hangar down here at DFW Airport in the middle of the night or early morning, so he could fly back to Michigan or something like that. And just getting to know him more, you know, he kind of became a friend of mine, somebody that I looked up to. So when I finally conned him into hiring me, he had a lot of influence on me, you know, and he mentored me really well, and you know, taught me a lot of things to do, things not to do. And you know, Connie the same way. I mean, you know, back then wasn't around Connie as much as I was Scott. I lived at Scott's house for, you know, probably almost a year, and it was a great time. And I look back at that time, and it was just really a fun time racing, you know, back then with Scott. And then, you know, obviously as time went on, you know, working more side by side with Connie, that was awesome for me as well.
You know, it's interesting. It kind of leads in my next question. Your career spanned, like you iterated to earlier, you know, decades. And a lot of this time, you know, 80s to 90s was spent when, you know, people like Bernstein, Amato, Maldani, Coletta, all these people were still active in drag racing. You know, what was it like racing with these icons in the sport? You know, what were they really like?
Well, you know, for me, I was still young, and I was still in awe of a lot of these people. And you know, on the driver's side of things, you know, having, you know, guys like Kenny Bernstein, Joe Amato, Don the Snake Perdome, you know, Shirley Muldowney, all, you know, all the list goes on and on. There was just so many great people. And on the other side of it was the crew chiefs. And at that time, you know, I was definitely more interested in trying to make a car go quick and fast, as opposed to sitting in a car going quick and fast. So for me, like the guys like Dale Armstrong and Tim Richards and, you know, Ron Tobler and you know, people like that were just like, wow, these are the people that I really looked up to. Dick LaHaye, Bernie Federley, there's Austin Coyle. There's so many great guys. And, you know, once I got to start knowing these people, and I realized, you know, hey, they're really cool guys, and they're humans as well. And it was a great time for me. And probably the biggest turning point in my career, you know, came when a gentleman by the name of Maynard Yingst came to work for Connie and Scott. And it was, I believe it was back in 1991 is where it was. And Maynard was a championship winning funny car crew chief with Bruce Larson. And, you know, Bruce was no longer racing. So we brought Maynard on to help with our team. And Maynard saw something in me that maybe I didn't think anybody else saw in me. And so it kind of gave me that incentive to work harder at trying to become, you know, an assistant crew chief or a crew chief. And he really, and I looked at Maynard because he pretty much studied under Tim Richards. And Tim Richards is by far one of the best top fuel crew chiefs ever, right? And so working with Maynard side by side, and then we became friends after that. And, you know, and then unfortunately, you know, Maynard ended up passing away a few years later. But he was somebody that really, I kind of like nudged me into taking that next step forward. And then another guy by the name of Frank Bradley, you know, the beard, he was that kind of that same way. He saw something in me that maybe I might have had. And then, but I didn't know I had. And then it all changed when Dick LaHaye came to work for the Coletta team. And Dick LaHaye was awesome. And I truly enjoyed working for him because he was so passionate about winning and so passionate about, you know, safety on a race car and getting the most out of his guy. Just like he was like wanting to build a Swiss watch every time we went up to the start line. And that was a really cool deal working for him. And then, after Dick LaHaye left the team and Ed McCullough stepped in, that was cool too, because the Ace is one of the greatest funny car drivers of all time. And he's a very underrated crew chief, in my opinion. I think he's one of the top crew chiefs out there as well. And so I feel so fortunate to have worked around legends of the sport and learned from them. It was really, really cool. And I really enjoyed that.
See that right there, like talking about those different guys and different, they were all great racers. They became great crew chiefs. And like, someone like LaHaye and Ace and guys like that, the thing that always kind of came to mind with me and those guys, tough. They just seemed like they were tough because they were going to do what they had to do to get the job done. And they understood that it was a grind to do what you guys do.
Oh yeah. I mean, like LaHaye, he was definitely tough, and he was not a big guy, but he wasn't afraid of anything or anybody. And then of course the Ace is the Ace. I mean, that guy's just tough, period. Looking at him, he's getting up there in age, but I'm still scared to death of him. I think, I said, boy, I hope he doesn't ever pull them glasses off, because he always said when he pulls the glasses off, there's going to be a problem. And I'm like, boy, I don't want to be anywhere around that. And then Connie, of course, that is the ultimate scrapper that there ever was. He'll take on anything, anybody, anytime. And it's just funny, some of those stories that, Shirley told me of her and Connie going down the road were hilarious. Some of the things that Connie would get himself into, it was just like, you got to be kidding me. But it doesn't surprise me, and Connie to this day, even though he's 83 years old, doesn't get around that much. He's still tough as nails, in my opinion.
I picture a lot of those old school guys, they're at the hotel getting ready to go to the track for the day. And most normal people are putting cream or sugar in their coffee, and they're like putting a dash of nitro in there, just raw nitro, to get themselves ready for what they had to do for the day.
Yeah. These guys were, they were the epitome of what nitro racing was all about. They had the Ace McCullough and Dick LaHaye and Connie. Those are guys that just eat, breathe, and live nitromethane. And, Connie to this day, he's out there. He's very involved with his, Top Fuel car that Sean Langdon drives. And he just loves it. And it was neat being able to work with him, after he sold his business in the mid 90s. And then early in 2000, he bought it back. And he told me, he says, because I asked him, I said, why are you doing this? Why are you buying your business back? Well, I want to race the right way. So he's, the way he always told me is that we're a drag racing team that owned an air cargo company. And, his love for drag racing is, I think, second to none in my opinion. But yeah, these guys, they were just, and the things they went through, they didn't have the big trucks and trailers and the big teams that we have now, or, when you'd get a part from, a manufacturer, a part these days is pretty nice, pretty much straight bolt on. Back then you had to do a lot of massaging with parts. So these guys were, they made everybody's life easier today. So all the young crew guys and stuff that are out there now working on these cars, they owe a lot to guys like, Dick LaHaye and Ed McCullough and Connie Coletta and Frank Bradley, just for taking our sport and just making it better and making it easier for people to work on these cars.
And I think not only easier, but I think we also need, with the same vein, safer, because back when those guys were racing, this was like when I think we're lulled into a false sense of security on how safe these cars are. We forget how dangerous they really are, because back in those, 60s, 70s, and parts of the 80s, these things were still scary, wild animals where, people got hurt pretty bad on a regular basis.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you learn from mishaps out there, it's always going to make the sport better. So these guys that raced in the 50s and 60s and 70s, through every setback they had, if it was an accident or something, they learned from that, and they made things better, and we continue to do that today. And safety, that's why the NHRA was formed, their dedication to safety. And that's something that the NHRA and all the racers that we believe 110% in every time we roll up there. We don't want to go up there and play Russian roulette with a driver's life, and so I commend the ongoing feeling and passion about safety in this sport, because losing Scott back in 2008 was something I don't ever want to go through again. And because that was when you looked at Scott, he was a guy that there was definitely, like, he was like his dad, tough as nails, and can drive anything, put wheels under it and give him a steering wheel, he'll drive it. And so I never thought ever that anything would ever happen to Scott in a race car. And unfortunately it did. And but we learned from that. And that's what, Connie said after the accident, that, we're going to learn from this, and we're going to do what we can to help make it safer for other drivers. And, I remember the following year, when Alexis DeJoria was driving her alcohol funny car, and she went off the end of the track there, and the new netting there at Englishtown saved her life, and that was something that was important to us, that because of the tragedy with Scott, he was able to protect Alexis that time. And so that's something that, was a pretty, awesome deal, so to speak. And then getting to know Alexis a lot better after that, and obviously her becoming part of the Coletta team. I mean, that was, that was tough. And, having lost Scott and everything that he meant to me, everything he meant to the Coletta team, everything that he meant to the sport of drag racing, his family, so on, so forth. I mean, it was good that something good came out of that.
Oh, totally. Now, before we move on to our next set of questions, I got to plug our sponsor for this episode, Airflow Research. Airflow Research is the original CNC ported cylinder head. From the street enthusiast to the hardcore racer, AFR has designed a cylinder head for your application with one goal in mind: to just go fast. Now, speaking of going fast, you wrote a book called Top Fuel for Life, which is not something people in the sport of drag racing typically do, as, write popular books. It's just, especially while they're still active in the sport. What made you just decide to go, hey, I'm gonna write a book today? How did that come about?
Well, it all started, in 2013, in June of 2013, I lost my wife, Tammy. And, after that, I had some friends of mine that were trying to help me through this. They gentleman by the name of Brian Marshall and Scott Garwood, and they were kind of helping me through it. They were helping, they were working with Doug Coletta at the time. And so after the 2013 season, we were kind of reflecting on 2013. And, I started talking about Tammy and some of the things, the experiences I had with her, from when she found out she had cancer up until she passed. And, some of those like experiences that helped make you a better person. So I would mention these things, and So we were sitting there one night at dinner, and Brian and Scott both said, "Hey, you ever thought about writing a book?" I go, "No. Why would I write a book?" And they're like, "Well, you have some great experiences that you could share with people that maybe they're going through the same thing, that you went through with Tammy, and maybe you can help somebody." And I said, "Well, I have no idea how to write a book." I go, "To you guys?" And they're like, "No, but we could find somebody." So they did, and they talked me into this, and it was a cool experience. We did a lot of videotape recordings, had a lot of participation and help from other people within the Coletta team or out in, part of NHRA drag racing. And I had a ghostwriter, and she was awesome. Michelle was great, to work with, and kind of help, develop a timeline and a story arc and all these things. And we just started writing this book. And I remember I received the first copy. I received it at my house, and it was the author's copy, and I had it sitting there, and my daughter was there with me, and I showed her the book, and she goes, "Do you mind if I read that book?" I go, "No, not at all." I said, "Just be aware there might be some typos in it or whatever, because it's a rough copy." And so I gave her this book, at like 9:30 at night. I went to bed shortly after that. And when I woke up the next morning, she was there, and I asked her, I said, "Hey, did you get a chance to look at that book?" She goes, "Yeah, I read the whole thing." I go, "You read the whole thing?" She says, "Yeah, I stayed up all night and all morning to read it." And I said, "Well, what'd you think?" And she says, "I thought it was really good." And so that right after that point, I was like, nothing else matters at that point. If she approved of it, I was good with it. But once it came out, and the response that I got from fans at the racetrack that would come up and share a similar story, of a loved one having cancer, or losing a loved one to cancer, or losing a loved one to anything. That was like made a huge impact on me. And so I was happy that in some small way it was helping people, helping people grieve, or helping people that were going through similar situations that I went through, and learning from the mistakes that I made, in life. And, to be able to talk to some of our fans, or just, everyday people that really they didn't even know anything about drag racing, and they read my book to tell me, how much it meant to them, and, the impact that it made, on their lives. That was a big thing for me. And I never would have thought it would have done that. And so it's something that I'm proud of. And it's a little, I wish I would have promoted it a little more, or done a little bit more with it, but it was, there's that modesty thing. And I never wanted to really get after it too much, but I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed meeting people after they read the book. And it's something that was neat, and something that I don't know if I'll ever do it again. But it was definitely a cool thing for me to experience, especially in my life at that time in my life.
Well, if you do ever decide to write another book, something you could write about is kind of leads into this next question, is what it's like to actually be a crew chief. Because people see you doing your job at the track, doing the crew chief stuff, banging on the keyboard, looking intensely at parts or whatever. What does a crew chief do, in a typical pro team when you're not at the track? And that's something I'd like to know, is like, I don't picture you guys like being stored away in a charging container. I'm sure there's something you got to do during the week, right?
Well, when I worked for the Coletta team, that was a big job for me because I was a crew chief on Doug Coletta's car, but I also was a general manager and ran the day-to-day operations of the team. So I definitely had my hands full, my plate full. So there was always something going on, whether you're dealing directly with the team that you worked on at Coletta's, or you're working with sponsors, or you're working with other parts of the Coletta organization, because, we grew that team when I took over as general manager back in 2000. We had one car and we had like 9 employees. And pretty soon the team grew, and you end up having 4 cars. You have a full-blown CNC shop, chassis shop, hospitality team, and and you've got 80 employees. That's a lot. And so my role now as crew chief of Paul Lee's car, it's a much simpler role because Paul's been great to me, and he allows me to fly in and tune the car. And I've got 2 really great guys that kind of keep everything moving forward, for us with Paul's car, with Mark Denner and Donnie Bender. And so definitely a lot different, my role as crew chief with Paul Lee's car as opposed to my role as crew chief on Doug Coletta's car. But the end result, result is still the same. You want to go out and you want to win, and you have to think hard about decisions you make, because I always kind of compare us crew chiefs like weathermen, and weathermen aren't always right. They're only right a very small percentage of the time. You'll get a forecast that says, oh, it's going to be sunny and 80 today, and the next thing you know, it's raining and 60. Same thing with a crew chief. When we make a decision, we make our best educated decision to go up there and run our race car as quick and fast as we possibly know how to do it. Sometimes the result isn't that. Sometimes you go up there and you smoke the tires, or you shake the tires, or you drop the cylinder, anything like that. And very rarely do you ever get that, like what you call at the time a perfect run. And so it's tough, because as a crew chief, you make all these decisions on the car. So you've made a head gasket call, you've made blower overdrive calls, you've made ignition timing curve calls, fuel system curve calls, clutch timing, and all these things. And when the car goes up there and it runs good, everybody's happy, of course. But if it doesn't run good, the first thing everybody wants to do is turn around and look at the crew chief. Like, why did it do that? So you got to have some thick skin and some big shoulders to be a crew chief out there. And you have to be able to be accountable. And, so if you make a decision on a race car and it doesn't work the way you had hoped, you have to be accountable for that decision you made. And, I remember working with Connie, like if the car didn't run good, I mean, he was right up there, like, what happened? And, so you'd have to tell him what happened. And, but the cool part with him is, once you got through the initial of, thinking that he might be upset with you or anything like that, he was trying to help you for the next run. And that's the cool thing. That's what I like about Paul Lee. We're a part-time team. Paul gives us everything we need, to run well. Don Schumacher Racing has been a huge help for Paul Lee Racing. And so we have all the tools in our bag, to really do a good job. But sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. And, Paul's definitely a guy that he's always encouraging, so if the car doesn't run good, he'll come back. And, I'm always the first one, like if it smokes the tires or doesn't run as good as I hope, I'll say, hey, I'm sorry. I don't know why it did that, but I'm going to work hard to make sure that it doesn't do that again. And he's always like, hey, no problem, brother. You know, we'll get it this next time. I have confidence in you. And that's cool. But, you know, making those decisions sometimes, boy, I'll tell you what, that's what's given me a lot of gray hair. Even though I tell my daughter she's the one who gives me gray hair, it's real. I think most of the time she's told me, she says, oh, that's a combination of Connie and being a crew chief on one of these cars, and I guess I'm part of it too, she says.
Well, I think it's always interesting when you're watching a broadcast of NHRA racing, and all of a sudden there's a unscheduled high energy engine disassembly that occurs on the track, and you know the guy on the starting line will ask the crew chief what happens, and sometimes you can just tell the crew chief what's to go. Dude, I don't even know what happened. Why are you asking me right now? I got to go look at this. Did you think I put a tune-up in it that said I want to send a piston into low orbit? We got to figure this out.
Oh yeah, when it goes out there. I mean, when something like that happens, what happened? I have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, at first, like when I was younger, I try to like analyze it a little bit and figure it out, and then I would just finally, I have no idea. I'll let you know once I look at everything, because sometimes you know, your initial reaction to something like that isn't always what really happens. So it's like, you know, I'd rather take my time, go back and look and diagnose things, and then, all right, here's what happened.
Results are pending autopsy after the run, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what again makes with Nitro racing is. I really think that you read a lot of people's comments on social media, and it's like people have been numbed to just how unpredictable these cars really are, where you could have the best tune up for the right conditions, everything happening is supposed to happen, and all of a sudden a valve and piston want to kiss, and you know, parts fail, things happen, and you have to figure out how to account for that going forward.
Oh yeah, there's so many things that can go wrong in one of these cars, and you know, you try to do everything you can. You know, it's like my business here. You know, with my oil change shop, we have what we call preventative maintenance, and it's kind of the same thing with a top fuel car or funny cars. Like you're doing all this preventative maintenance on these cars. You know, whether it's, you know, checking pistons, rods, valve, everything there is. You're doing everything you can to try to prevent something from happening. And but it doesn't mean it won't, you know, and you just have to be able to know, like, okay, if something happens, how do you know, figure this out? You know, because there's a lot of times you'll have something go on with one of these cars, and it'll stump people. And I think one of the greatest things I always liked about Connie Coletta is that if he didn't know something, he would tell you he didn't know. And so when he would do that, I knew that it was okay for me to say, you know what, I don't know. Because if a guy like him says, hey, I don't know what happened here, and there's a guy who's forgot more about Nitro racing than most people will ever know, I realized it was okay for me to do that as well. And then, you know, it's not a negative if you have to go ask for help. You know, because the one thing that's really cool about our sport is that if somebody's struggling out there, people are there to help. And as crew chiefs, we've all been there. And you know, I would say probably one of the best guys that I've ever been around, as far as when you ask for help and he gives you help, is a guy by the name of Alan Johnson. You know, Alan's one of the greatest, you know, crew chiefs of all time, and a great manufacturer of great parts and things like that. And over the years, you know, whether it was Connie or myself, you know, you call up Alan and you ask him a question, he'll do everything he can to help you out. And he's that way with a lot of people. And Connie was that way too. You know, if people were struggling with something, he was always the first one to help. So that's what I really love about our sport, is that as good as some people may be, and you can get on these good streaks and winning races and all that, we've all been there where we struggled. And when we do struggle, there's people there that will reach out and help you, or if you go up and ask them for help, they'll do that. I mean, I look at like what Bobby and Dom Lagana are doing out there right now. That is the epitome of awesome, in my opinion. To the way they go and they help some of these smaller teams, and the Torrance is doing that as well. That's what this sport needs. And I think the coolest thing that Dom and Bobby have done to date, at least in my opinion, maybe I'm a little partial to it, is helping Krista Baldwin and the Greek, and the way that car ran over the weekend, that was all time. And I'm very proud of her. And to sit there, and I've known the Greek forever, it seems like. And I was over there, sitting there talking with him, and he was so proud of his granddaughter. And then Dom, he's over there, and it's like, that is cool. And that's what the sport needs. That's, and to have two guys like Bobby and Dom Lagana out there helping some of these smaller teams, and helping them run good and make sure their stuff's put together right. And now Bobby and Dom, they're helping Luigi Novelli's cars. So I'm excited for Luigi next time he comes out racing. So it's just cool that, even though Bobby and Dom, they work on a great team with the Torrances still allow them, and Bobby and Dom are still willing to help anybody out there, to run good and to be successful out there. So I think it's cool. There needs to be more stories like that out there.
I call them the Torrance Tribe is truly amazing, because you have their two cars and Bobby and Dom, and then you have Scott Palmer, who travels with them, who's a character in amongst himself. And it's like, to me, the rest of NHRA, some of the pits are it's very classical music, very just pomp and circumstance, and then down the way you hear Ain't Nothing But a Good Time playing down here, and they're down there whacking the throttle, just having a good time, helping each other out. And I think, absolutely, like what you said, that's what makes it fun, is seeing those guys step up and they get excited. You look at how excited Krista was after making those passes, and that wasn't like hamming it up. She's lit, and she's happy, and she loves racing. That was all 100% pure and real.
Oh, that was, she's such a good kid, and she's part of our team. She works for Paul at McLeod Driveline Products, and she helps us on Paul Lee Racing team, and does a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't get credit for. But I've known her since she was a newborn, basically. And my wife, my late wife Tammy, and Krista's mom Paula Baldwin, they were always friends, and they'd hang out at the racetrack. So Ashley and Krista, my daughter Ashley and Krista, used to hang out when they were real small, and at the racetrack and stuff like that. And and to know who Krista's dad was, Bobby Baldwin was just a sweetheart of a guy, super nice guy. And then to know her grandfather, the Greek, I mean, I remember the Greek coming to my dad's shop in Dallas. My dad's shop in Dallas was literally right next door to Chaparral Trailers. So we always had cool people coming and visiting us at my dad's shop. And, I remember the Greek coming there because him and my dad were friends, and to see the Greek out there driving as long as he did, and now, allowing Krista to drive his car, and then the Laganas coming over and making sure that thing was good to go for her, good to go for the Greek. I mean, it's awesome. And, it's really neat with Krista, because she's a third generation racer. She absolutely loves this sport, and she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. And so I hope, as when you see that excitement on her face, and how excited she was. I mean, I went over and saw her after first round, after she made it into the second round at the four wides. I mean, that excitement, there was nothing fake or anything about that. I mean, it's pure. And that's what needs to happen in this sport more often, is things like that are just, it's cool. And it made me really happy for her, and made me really happy for her mom, and for Bobby. I know Bobby was up there, you know, her dad, Bobby Baldwin, was up there watching over her. And then the Greek, you know, just to see the excitement on him. I mean, we nobody knows how old the Greek really is, but he's still out there doing his deal, and just a great guy. It's just, that's a great story in my opinion.
Oh, totally, totally. You know, I've had her on the show, talked to her many times, working with, you know, the company on a project car of my own, and you could just like, you can tell that it's, again, it's not corporate like Paul and like that whole operation. It's like they want to help people go fast, and it's like they attract that whole crowd. And like you said, it just, it's like a all, you know, rising tide raises all ships, and I think that's important. Like you said, it's exactly what we need to see more of.
Yeah, you know, the corporate mentality has a place in our sport, obviously. But I sure do like it when we're in the entertainment business, and you know, we're out there trying to put on a good performance for people, and wow them with a great ET or a great speed, or, you know, an exciting tire smoking pedaling match, things like that. And what we get to do, it's still a game pretty much. And we're out there playing with race cars, and we're playing with them, making them go quick and fast. And, you know, it's no different than some of the athletes that are out there, whether they, you know, play baseball, football, basketball, hockey. You know, it's a kid's game, and they're out there entertaining people. And, you know, I think I'd like for us I hope drag racing could get back to that more of the pure excitement and the pure entertainment factor, and that it just doesn't get too corporate-y. And you know, because I think that I think that doesn't do anything good for the sport as far as it leads to fans. I mean, obviously corporate involvement's huge, you know, with sponsorships and things like that, but it'd be nice if teams were able to still have that fun while they were doing it, you know. And that's the one thing I see out there now compared to, like, even when I first started. You know, it sure seemed like as crew guys and things, you know, back when I started in the late 80s, that we had fun, you know, out there racing. And you know, we were always met with different obstacles and circumstances and things like that. I remember, you know, my first year racing with the Coletta team, we hit NHRA races and IHRA races and some match races. I think that year, my first year, we raced like 32 times, and that was fun. And it was a lot of fun. And, you know, but as time's gone on, it's a little bit different now. And I'm not saying it's not fun. I mean, I still love to make a car go quick and fast, but it doesn't seem like everybody else has as much fun. And that's why it's neat to see, like, Krista, what she did and how excited she was. The Torrances, I mean, they, you know, starts with Mama Kay and then Billy T and then Steve, like, they like to have fun. And then that translates down to Hogan and the Lagana boys and Gary Pritchett and all them. They truly enjoy and embrace the fun that it is to be a drag racer. And you know, I've always said that, you know, I want to cherish every win that I've ever had. And that's why we're at Coletta's, you know, we used to have the mosh pit. And it was because you never knew if that was going to be your last race win. And you know, so that's something that it can have. It doesn't matter how dominant of a team you have, anything like that, it can all change in the blink of an eye. And so that's why I like, you know, if we run good or we, you know, win a race or anything like that, I'm purely excited about it. And you never know. It may never happen again.
Well, I think you look at someone like if you watch John Force's, victory speech after the 4 rides, we need more of that. We need that front and center. Like, to me, that's what makes John Force one of the best, is just like, people don't understand when you ask John a question, don't expect it to get answered, because like the filter goes away and it's like just this unconscious stream of whatever is going on with him right now, whether it's happiness, angry, sad, it's coming at you and you can't fake that. It makes it wild. It makes it unpredictable, like the racing.
Well, and that's what makes him one of the greatest of all time. And I sat up in the stands at Charlotte and I watched the final round with my daughter. And, so, after Force won and they interviewed him, I mean, it was awesome. And the fans in the stands, they truly enjoyed that, and they laughed and they cheered, and that's what we need, and I don't think there was anything scripted about anything that Force did. That was like just a classic John Force interview. And that's what made him so great for all these years. And he's still out there winning, obviously, and he's still out there competing for championships. And he cares about his daughter's racing, and he cares about, Robert Height. He's obviously done amazing things for himself and for the sport of drag racing, and the entertainment factor that he has. Some days, as racers, we look at him like, what the hell's he talking about? Or what's he trying to say? But, sometimes when you peel away through all the layers of things, you just know this guy is a diehard drag racer who absolutely loves the sport. And, and the sport's better because of him.
Oh, totally. To me, personalities is what makes it so incredibly interesting. And when you never know, when you put a mic in front of somebody's mouth, what's going to come out or how it's going to come out. And you get some people that are very, collected and calm. And then you get the people that truly run on all emotion, and drag racing, especially at the nitro levels, just, it cranks all that up, to 11 on the amp.
Oh yeah. And we've got some good personalities out there. Ron Capps, he's does a great job with his interviews, and I look at somebody like Leah Pruitt, like she's good behind the mic. She's I've watched her a few times, and she gets pretty animated and stuff like that. And obviously, different people appeal to different groups of our fans out there. And it's neat, and I like Steve Torrance. Like, I think he does a great job too, and he's definitely can be animated and passionate about things. And the sport needs that. I wish, I go back to Connie. Connie, when you get him, like Connie's funny, and but he never really came across that way on the camera. He's very intense and stuff like that, whether he was a driver or crew chief. And but he's really entertaining. And I wish that people would have seen more of that out of him, because he was, and even to this day, he's still pretty quick-witted and can come off with some pretty, good one-liners. And I just think it's just cool, the people that are out there, and it's, it's kind of like wrestling, that professional wrestling, they've got those good interviews, guys like The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin or Ric Flair, things like that. We have kind of that in our sport as well too. And it just gets people's, our fans' blood flowing when they hear, a John Force, ramble on like he did after he won Charlotte. It was a passionate interview. It was funny, and it really resonated with a lot of our fans. And we need that. We need to, embrace our fans. And it's obviously been a tough last year for everybody in this country. So, for John to come back, win that race, it was big. It was big for our sport. And, obviously it was big for him. And I think it's cool.
Yeah, to me, that there's so much you could think about looking at this. When you mentioned Connie and personality, imagine if you take Connie and Shirley from back in their prime and you stick them in a reality TV show like John Force had. I think that would have been that'd have been bonkers. Like those two, like going back and forth, that would have been, it would have been wild.
Oh, I imagine it would have been, because those two are, obviously they're both passionate about what they do, and they're both, very strong-willed people. And I used to think that they were a lot alike. I mean, just we had one was a male and one was a female, but they were both like really intense people. And it probably would have been pretty funny. Probably would have made for some pretty funny TV and pretty intense TV, I imagine.
Yeah, that's I always tell people that the personalities and what you don't see that doesn't happen on the track in a lot of racing environments is 100 times more interesting and entertaining, because you'll see things in the pits that you might know is an inside joke, and it's just other people look at it and they're like, there's got to be a story behind it, and you just have to look at it and be like, I really can't tell you the story because it's going to probably make you look at everything a whole lot different how it works around here.
Yeah, I mean, there's some funny stuff that goes on out there, and one of the funniest guys that I really enjoyed working with is Ron Tobler. And everybody looks at Ron, and like, okay, here's Tobler. He's just like this guy that's been out there racing, for a long time. First, with Shirley, as Shirley's crew chief. Before that, he worked with Dickie Venable's dad, and then out there forever. Obviously, a lot of success and all this stuff. And I remember when he came to work for Coletta's, and we're driving down to Columbus, right? And I'm in my car. We're in my car, and it's my brother and Ron and I. And all of a sudden, Tobler's like, it's got a Dr. Dre CD. And so here we are going down the road listening to Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and all this other stuff. And this is Tobler stuff. And I'm like, Tob, what? Like, I didn't know you like this. Oh, yeah, I love this stuff. And then, then as time went on, and more people knew that he loved rap music and things like that. And then he'd have like wine night in his trailer. And Ron really embraced having fun at the racetrack. I mean, he was obviously very successful on the racetrack as a crew chief, but he also embraced his guys and his surroundings of people, and he, you can go over there anytime, and he was always happy to have you there. He was, if he had a glass of wine or whatever, and we just really enjoyed ourselves. And it was funny because when Tobe come to work for us at Coletta's, when we were at Coletta's, he'd never drank wine. He wasn't into any of that stuff. But our friend John Glover from Champion Spark Plugs, who was with Champion Spark Plugs forever, Glover taught my brother and myself and Tobler about drinking wine. And because Glover was this English guy, and Glover was just a fantastic guy, and he taught us about drinking wine. So after that, I told Tobler, over the years, I said, man, you went from this guy who drank like Chambord kamikazes to now you're like a wine snob. And it's so funny, to see how he embraced wine and things like that. And so him and his wife Ellen, they always have a good time with that. And they had, I guess in Indy they'd have wine parties, and it's just, and that was cool. And they would bring that out to the racetrack, and it was a fun time, and that's, something like a guy like Tobler. Like, I miss him out at the racetrack because he was a personality out there, and he was fun to be around. Even though he was a very intense racer, he still liked to have fun out there, and that's why it's neat to see the Torrances and Laganas have fun the way they do.
Speaking of having fun, I always like to throw at least one fun question at my guests. I have many mystical powers, one of which is bending reality in an unlimited wallet. And in this case, the Dragzine Podcast is going to give you an unlimited budget to build the ultimate top fuel team. Whatever you got to spend to do it, who's going to be your driver, who you going to throw on the crew, how you going to build it. You can go back and we'll even give you a time machine. So you can go back in time and grab people like in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to grab people. So it's your opportunity to build the ultimate top fuel team. What are you going to do?
Oh man, that's an awesome project right there. Of course, I'd love for my bro Paul Lee to drive, but I think he likes funny cars better. So we're talking about a top fuel dragster here. I think if I could have anybody drive a top fuel dragster for me, I would want to get Scott Coletta to drive it. Scott's he could drive a funny car or a dragster, but Scott was just an all-around excellent driver, could drive anything. And he also had good feedback into the car. As far as, like who would I have run this car? I'd want to bring Dick LaHaye back. And because I think when that team when we were together with Scott as a driver and Dick LaHaye as our crew chief, I think that was like an ultimate team that really didn't understand what we had in front of it. Dicko made us all better because of it. And it was, I just think that LaHaye, like what I saw from him, not only just with Scott's car, but what he did when he worked with Doug Herbert, what he did when he worked for the Snake with Larry Dixon driving. I thought that was like the ultimate team. And then, of course, you got to have two crew chiefs on all these cars, these days. I would get a guy like, an Alan Johnson. And, because I always looked at Alan as very similar to LaHaye, but LaHaye would think about things and want to build parts, but he didn't have everything like Alan has. Alan's got a full-blown, machine shop to do all these things. And so I don't know if it could work, but I think to have Alan Johnson and Dick LaHaye team up on a car would be pretty awesome. And, I think that would be a pretty wild deal. And then as far as crew guys on the team, there's so many crew guys out there that I've worked with over the years. And, I look at, obviously I'd want my brother on that team. And then, I'd love to, get guys like Nicky Bonifani back doing the clutch, which I don't know if he really ever did it back then. We always joke with him about he just stood around profiled and stuff like that. But Nicky did a good job for us, and then just try to put together a bunch of other guys. An old friend of mine, Randy Green, he was probably one of the best bottom end guys out there. Waterbed Fred Miller, would have to have him part of the team, and D Gant, old Blue Max stuff. There's just a wide variety of people that you can have out there, and I think you'd have a pretty good team. I think in that respect.
The idea of having someone like Dick LaHaye's mind with Alan Johnson's toolbox would be terrifying to any other team, because Dick would be like, I got a really bad idea. And Alan would be like, well, I can build your bad idea. and then there you go.
Oh yeah. And Alan is so smart and everything. It's just like him, like Alan and LaHaye were like so very similar. And, you know, it was like, they were both like, and Alan told me this one time, because I told him that Connie was crazy, and he goes, and Alan's crazy, but he's more calculated crazy. And LaHaye's kind of, you know, crazy there as well too, but in a different way. And I think those two guys would, I don't know. I mean, it could be a train wreck, but it also could be a pretty awesome sight to see, you know, with those two guys working on a car together, the way people work on cars together right now. You know, so I don't know. I think it'd be pretty interesting deal, you know, to see how all that worked out.
Well, Jim, our time here is coming to an end, and I like to give my guests their opportunity to pull off their inner John Force and thank their sponsors and tell people where, you know, in this day and age, websites, social media, the whole deal. I know you don't have a car to go down and read all your sponsors off of and what you got going on, but I'll let you do your best to, you know, turn the floor over to you so you can tell people where they can learn more about you, what you got going on, and who you need to thank.
Well, you know, I want to thank Paul Lee. You know, it's funny. I get a lot of people, that, you know, they see me out the racetrack. Oh, it's good to see you back out there again. You know, are you tuning a car? Yes, I am tuning a car. It's Paul Lee's, you know, McLeod FTI funny car. And, you know, so, you know, Paul's like, you know, really become one of my closest friends that I have out there. And not only in racing, but as a business mentor as well. He's such a brilliant guy. So Paul's like, you know, the number one guy for me out there. And then, you know, our sponsors, you know, we've got Redline Oil, we've got, you know, we've got McLeod Driveline Products, FTI Global, all these people that, you know, allow us and give us the opportunity to go out there and race. And you know, real thankful. I've got a great relationship with Ed Justice Jr. at Justice Brothers. I mean, what a fantastic guy he is. And that's definitely a legendary family out there in all of motorsports. But, you know, the main people, you know, there's so many great people out there. I just like all the racers out there. They're so much like family. All of, you know, my daughter comes to the races with me, and she, you know, every day I see her, it just puts a smile on my face. And I could be having a crappy day and I get to see my daughter, and that'll just change everything for me. And then, you know, I get to see my brother all the time. And so I'm just really thankful for everybody in drag racing and what everybody brings to this sport. And, you know, hopefully this sport can keep rolling on for many more years and have much success, you know, for everybody.
Absolutely. And I've got to thank our sponsors here as we close things out. AFR Performance Distributors, Eldebrock, ProCharger, Holly, MSD, Flowmaster, and Mosier Engineering are the companies that help keep this podcast going. Jim, thank you so much for going on the show. It's been awesome. Hopefully, if you're at Norwalk, I'll stop by and say hello, my friend.
Yeah, we'll be there for sure. I thank you very much, Brian, and I wish you much success with your podcast.
Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Brian.